Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I've been promising to do a video lately on this whole R. Kelly thing, and for me, I want to approach it a little differently. Originally, I wasn't going to watch the video. I didn't think that I needed to watch the video. I felt that there's just been enough over the years for me personally to have just accepted that R. Kelly was just not somebody that I wanted to promote or listen to. So I've actually been switching the station if he does happen to come on. But that aside, I again wanted to look at this from a number of different topics. So I wanted to make sure that before I actually spoke on it that I did have a more informed position. So I actually did watch the first episode, and I'm not going to really go too deep into the things that I saw off of the first episode. Again, I don't really feel that anything that was revealed on that episode was new or was really enlightening or helping me to see him as a different person. Now, I will admit that I never bothered to really look too deeply into R. Kelly's accusations. I definitely did listen to R. Kelly's music and stuff after hearing a lot of the stuff over the years. I would say within the past year is when I decided to stop listening to R. Kelly, and pretty much it wasn't even really a boycott, because I can't really say that I'm boycotting a person who I wasn't actively listening to anyhow. I can't remember last time I bought, well, I've never purchased an R. Kelly song, so he's never gotten money from me that way. I don't think I've ever streamed an R. Kelly song, so he hasn't gotten money from me that way. But again, lately, if I am in a space where it's playing or it's coming on, I do say, hey, let's change that. I'm trying to be more mindful and more intentional and more aware of not just looking at a single individual and looking at the overall problems or the overarching connections between the problems at large. So specifically with R. Kelly right now, we're talking about an adult male who seems to have an attraction to young girls and sexually assaulting them, raping them, power abuse, etc. Again, I feel like personally for me, that's not a thing that's unique to R. Kelly, so that's kind of my position on it. So what I want to talk about today, I have a few things that I wrote down. Definitely feel free to send a comment. Not really sure how long this video is going to be, so I guess if it gets to be a little too long, then I will probably just maybe make it a two-part video as opposed to a one-part video. So just going into my original thoughts that were surrounding the R. Kelly thing as a whole. My first question was, why did it take this series for so many people to decide that it was finally time to be done with R. Kelly? The reason I asked that question is, again, none of these accusations or none of these stories are new. So what was it specifically about this docu-series that caused any of you who may have now boycotted or muted R. Kelly to do so? I'm wondering if it's more so a response to the social media presence that's out there and that's surrounding people. So a lot of people are posting on their Facebook, Instagram, and other social media accounts that they don't even really want to be associated with people who are supporting or who have not made a public declaration of being anti-R. Kelly. So that's one. I'm also wondering, was this kind of like just destination TV watching? Because it seems like it could have easily been just something to watch, just like Bird Box became a thing. It seems like this R. Kelly video or this R. Kelly docu-series became a thing. It's like you had to have watched this series. You had to have talked about or spoken about this series on your social media to show how woke you are. That's Matrix in the background. She's messing with her brother Felix. So stay out of there. But yeah, so that's the question I had about that. It really just makes me again wonder, are people really mad about what's happening, or do they just want to appear to be on the right side of the woke side. So that's something I'm posing to whoever's watching. Definitely feel free to send your comments in the link section below. The second question I had was, did the series provide new information? So for me, I didn't know anything about R. Kelly, so I learned some new facts about him, and I think it does make me ask some questions, not necessarily relieve him of his problem or his situation as it relates to abusing young girls. I did not know that R. Kelly was sexually abused. I didn't know that that was something that was happening in his family. The reason I say that information does change for me is I am aware that people who are sexually abused can oftentimes become perpetrators of abuse themselves. And they kind of talked about that. Well, not kind of, they did talk about that in the video. What I don't excuse is an adult who recognizes that they have been damaged or abused, and it is going to cause them to possibly damage another person to keep that cycle going. I feel like at this point, if you are aware that you have an interest or a desire to do something that may be harmful to others, you should seek counseling. So that's that. It's not to excuse R. Kelly from what he did, but it's to say, oh, I didn't know that that happened, so I don't want to, again, negate the impact of people who are sexually abused. I don't know what he may have done. He may have sought therapy. That's something else. I don't know. So that was something. The Aaliyah confirmation for me was, I guess, an official confirmation. I know growing up there was always like a joke of R. Kelly marrying Aaliyah, or joking references to R. Kelly marrying Aaliyah in the age ain't nothing but a number thing. So that was a revelation to me. I wasn't aware that he had forged or had her birth certificate forged in order for her to be 18. I was always under the impression that her parents had given consent for her to get married. So that's a second thing. The fact that people would go so far as to have a document forged shows how problematic they knew it was. I guess the third thing, kind of tying into the age, is just a recognition of there are different statutes, I guess, of age of consent. So I didn't do any research on that. I don't know what the age of consent is in each state for these young girls that he touched or engaged with. Me personally, I don't really care if the age of consent is 15, 16. I just think it's skeezy for a grown man to be with a child, male, female, them, they, their, whatever that child identifies as. I just think it's skeezy. But again, if it's not illegal, that kind of becomes a matter of personal opinion versus anything else. I wouldn't let my child be around them. So that's another thing that I thought about through watching the video. Really outside of that, the video, again, did not influence my perception of R. Kelly or my decisions as it relates to how I'm going to proceed in the future when it comes to R. Kelly. Another question that I had pertaining to this whole series is, how far are people willing to go with boycotting R. Kelly? So for me, you can't just say I am over R. Kelly and that is the extent of your anger, because R. Kelly, again, had his hand in a lot of people's things and a lot of people's stuff. Just going to pull up a quick list of songs that were written by R. Kelly that were through other artists. So to really boycott R. Kelly is actually going to require people to do their homework and actually see if the song that you liked was by that artist. So for instance, 808 by Black was written by R. Kelly. I didn't know that was a song. All the Above, a Beanie Sigel song. Back and Forth, Aaliyah. Calling All Girls, the ATL song. Celebrate, Whitney Houston and Jordan Sparks. Cry, Michael Jackson. Dedicated, Pitbull. Fooling Around, Changing Faces. Friend of Mine, Kelly Price. Gigolo, Nick Cannon. Girlfriend, B2K. Hell Yeah, Genuine. And the list just goes on and on and on and on. It's Your World, Jennifer Hudson. So, I mean, the man is clearly very well connected and very, his catalog is deep, basically. So if we're boycotting R. Kelly, we have to boycott, in my opinion, everything attached to R. Kelly, every artist attached to R. Kelly, or at least the songs written by that person. Kind of while I'm on this topic, though, I kind of want to look at the second piece of that, though, is do we then extend that boycott to anyone who associated with R. Kelly knowingly after this information circulated through their circle, because clearly they knew it before it became public consumption or public news. So the people in this camp clearly, but I mean there had to have been other people within the industry who had firsthand knowledge of this. So my thing is, if we're going to boycott, we need to have expectations that anyone with knowledge is also boycotted, and then also attach their catalog and any of their other media and stuff that they worked with. So lastly, my piece with that attached to the video is, are people mad at the problem, which I see as grown men, again, having sex with kids? Or are people just mad at the face of the problem currently, who happens to be R. Kelly? I feel if you're going to go so far as to boycott R. Kelly, I don't see how you could not say you're mad at the overarching problem. And if you are mad at the overarching problem, I really would like to know what people are doing to go beyond their keyboards, go beyond Facebook, go beyond Instagram, Twitter, and really do something to show that you care about our girls and make sure not just our girls, but our girls specifically in this situation, but the young people who are out there who are in your lives, and making sure that they're being well, or even not in your life personally, but young people at large. You know, what are you doing to make sure that these people are no longer being given access to the kids and being able to hurt them? So those were the questions I had that were centered based around the video before I even watched it. And like I said, after watching it, those are still kind of the questions that I have. So moving on to like the second group of questions, I really wanted to kind of look at the responses that I saw on my friends' social media pages, Facebook and Instagram again, and just looking at that as a way of discussing this further. So I kind of broke them down into 7 categories. So the largest group is the group of people who are completely condemning R. Kelly, his actions, saying delete him, boycott him, you can't be my friend if you are still supporting R. Kelly. It seems a lot of women are in that camp. Actually, most of the women that I've seen post about it have posted in that camp. A good number of men on my friend list have also posted in that camp. The second group is, I don't want to say apologists, but people who are offering explanations for R. Kelly's behavior. What I mean by that is I've seen a number of my male friends talk about our high school years, or how they saw their female counterparts when they were juniors in high school or seniors in high school being picked up by grown men, 20-year-olds, drug dealers, and how that was actually a preference of the girls in the schools. That's definitely something that I've seen. It's definitely something that I'm aware of. So I acknowledge that, but then the question then goes, just because it becomes the norm, does it make it acceptable? Another thing with that was a lot of people then talked about their grandparents. Well, my grandma may have been 15 and my grandfather was 23. So then I was like, okay, that's a cultural thing. So that's another way of looking at it as well. So not to pass judgment, again, more so just to ask a question, is just where or when do you start to place the, I don't know what the word is I want to use, but when do you stop allowing the things that we knew or now know to be wrong to be defended? Like if you know it's wrong now, then why still defend it? So that's a question I have. A lot of my male friends have daughters now. So yes, you're defending low-key R. Kelly, but in the same exact situation, how would you feel? And it really shouldn't have to be your daughter in that situation, but just as a grown man now thinking about any child in that space, can you still comfortably say, well, these kids are actively choosing to be with an adult? So that's another question. I've seen some people making jokes of it. I'm not really a fan of that. So one of the memes I saw was surviving light-skinned girls. I mean, again, it's pretty straightforward. I'm not a fan because I just think you're making light of something that's a very serious situation for some people. Do you? I mean, I can't tell you what's not funny. I definitely have a dark sense of humor. I don't think comedy should be censored. So if you think it's funny, rock out. I just don't think it's funny to joke about sexual abuse. And yes, you're not talking about sexual abuse, but you're co-opting the moment and turning the meme into a joke. Yeah, I get it. It's just not my thing. Others, conspiracies to have black men's legacies or successful black men's legacies destroyed. They are using the Bill Cosby and now the R. Kelly comparison. Um, I don't know. I mean, if you don't do fucked up things, then you can't have your legacy fucked up. I mean, I don't necessarily want to be like every one of those situations that pop up in the world is automatically wrong. Everybody deserves a chance. But once it gets to be a pattern, I'm going to err, actually before it becomes a pattern, I'm going to probably err on the side of the person who's saying this is what happened. Um, Again, everybody deserves a chance to be defended. So I actually want to do another post about that another time because I'm still really not sure how to even speak on that because I've had conversations on it. So not to get too far off topic, but if you want to have me do a video on that, leave that in the comment and we could talk about that. Um, and then lastly, I'm really glad to see an increased call to protect our girls. Of course, women are all on that, but I'm really glad to see a lot of my male friends also um, commenting on the fact that we need to do more and actually talking about ways in which we can go about protecting our girls. So those were the comments that I've seen on my social media. If you've seen some that were different or if you want to talk about some that I've just mentioned, again, definitely feel free to reach out in the comments. I'll reply and we can go from there. The last piece that kind of deserves its own spot on the list is the conversation centered around can you separate the artistry from the artist? And John Legend spoke about this in his quick little piece on the first episode where he mentions that R. Kelly songs are the soundtracks of our lives. And that's true. I mean, how many people were conceived to R. Kelly? Like, that's a real thing. How many graduations played I Believe I Can Fly, The World's Greatest, Space Jam, growing up with Space Jam as a kid who grew up in that era. Step in the Name of Love at every family cookout. So his songs are definitely a part of a lot of our life experiences, and smells and songs are two of the things that trigger memory most. So it's hard for me to say, well, just flat out scratch everything that a person may have done because they are a horrible person, as if their music or their writing or their artistry now loses its value or its impact on your life or your development. So again, that might need to be a whole nother conversation as well. But for me, I think it's definitely a fair conversation to have. Especially since apparently R. Kelly was tried for at least some of these accusations in the past and he was not found guilty. Now, that does not negate that he didn't do it. It's just saying that, again, it's the question of if a person is accused of something, they go to court, they get let off, are you going to be okay with them then living their lives out throwing that up? And then I know people on the flip side say, well, what about these racially motivated things and those individuals are being acquitted and not being served, and then communities of color are saying, well, you can't trust the court system. So it's definitely, again, another conversation for another time. So I don't know. So what do you all think? Do you think that R. Kelly or any person's artistry should be ignored or now put an asterisk next to it because of some of the things that they've done? Again, I know some of you have already taken that stance, and if you have, I would love for you to share why you took that stance. And then lastly, the last group of observations that I have at the moment, again, was the show for entertainment purposes? So if you watched the show, would you mind being honest and saying you watched it because it was Destination TV? It was something that you had to watch so that you can speak about it. Um, Again, have you started purging all of your music list, media list from all accusers, all people who've been accused of misharms as it comes to harming women, children, as it comes to harming other marginalized groups, LGBTQ, as it comes to unequal pay, anything that you could think of where people are being mistreated or abused. Because again, if it's a bigger problem, then the bigger problem needs to be addressed. Um, Something that, again, I didn't think about, but I thought about after the fact is people who were adults in the 90s. So in 1994, I was 12. That's when Age Ain't Nothing But a Number came out. And there was also an interview with Aaliyah and R. Kelly on BET where they came dressed in the matching outfits. So apparently it was very well known in the stratosphere at that time what was going on with R. Kelly and Aaliyah. And people still were okay with it taking place. So if you were an adult in the early 90s and at that time frame, I'm really asking you all, could you share with me what were your thoughts or your feelings on the R. Kelly situation and the Aaliyah situation at that time? I don't want to, again, put words in your mouth. Teray mentioned that because R. Kelly, I guess, got married and it wasn't an established pattern because it was just Aaliyah, it was just a one time, that it was not seen as a predatory behavior or a predatory action. So if that's the case, then I would like to know and hear that from people. From people in my age group. So when I was in college, that's when the whole R. Kelly video came out with him pissing on people or pissing on the little girl. So that was the early 2000s. So I guess the same question goes to my age group and my friends. How did you feel about R. Kelly at the time? I'll speak for myself to give my perspective. I know there was a big conversation whether it wasn't R. Kelly or it was R. Kelly. So I guess a lot of us just rocked out with the idea that it may not have been R. Kelly and kind of just put it to the wayside. Again, R. Kelly Ignition was like one of these songs when I was in college. So I think it just became a matter of being willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, and also because at that time, really wasn't as much attention presented or provided or given to, I don't want to just keep saying the Me Too movement, but the idea of how much abuse women and young girls are experiencing and have experienced in just general everyday settings. So looking back on the past and examining that through current day lenses is something that I guess is the flip side of intersection that we have to get used to. So again, tying it back to race, you have to be able to be okay or at least understand that there might be some people who are older who lived in a different time, not to excuse their racist behaviors or their things that they've done, but that you can't look at somebody and what they've done and said in the 70s and say that person is forever a racist because they may have evolved or changed in the time between the 70s and now. So the same thing applies, I guess, when looking at the situation of sexual abuse. Like, you try to look at those situations that occurred before with current lenses, and I think for me, that's why I wanted to do this video. It's like, well, how do we do this and have the dialogue so that you recognize the behaviors as being problematic, but really engage in dialogue, not just engage in the back and forth or an attack on each other, or just engage in a you have to believe this is wrong. I think it's okay to allow people to ask questions, or allow men specifically, I guess for the most part, to ask questions about, no, not just men, for everybody to ask questions about, well, what is not allowed, what is considered inappropriate, and this is just idea of sex overall, not the specific R. Kelly situation. But I think it's all interconnected to say. So, yeah, I think for me in college and my friend group, it was really just we gave him the benefit of the doubt, we enjoyed his music, and we kept it moving. Now we're, in our mid-30s, and I think most of us have looked back and it's like, yeah, he's a scumbag. So I think I'm glad that in hindsight it didn't take us as long to adjust to the idea of our past actions being problematic and doing things to make sure that we are being more intentional, open, and supportive of our female friends, our women friends, our the women in our lives, etc. So that's kind of my position personally as it relates to the R. Kelly situation, growing up with the person in the 2000s. And I guess lastly, Jamila Lemieux, she spoke and she asked, where was the outrage in the media, the black media at the time? And I don't think that's a question that is limited to that time frame. I still feel that the media does not give proper attention to the attentions of marginalized groups, but specifically right now, black and brown girls, black and brown trans women. I think too often these groups are able to be swept under the rug because they are not given the media attention that they deserve, or they're allowed to be treated as disposable. So my hope is this R. Kelly series truly goes beyond just being a current pop culture moment, and we take it as a learning moment. So for me personally, I'm really glad that I did watch the first episode. I would love to have a deeper conversation with some people, preferably a panel of other guys, because again, I think there needs to be a conversation amongst a group of guys as we discuss a number of things, maybe just a topic on just the Me Too movement in the state of 2019, and tackle a number of things: R. Kelly, consent, why some men are afraid of the Me Too movement. So this is my first video. It's very low-key right now. I'm definitely hoping to, as I get better with this and more comfortable with doing it, to provide a little bit more of a professional looking space. But again, for right now, this is how I'm going to come to you all. Hopefully you like what you saw, and if so, you'll subscribe to my channel so that you'll get an alert whenever a new video posts. So thank you all for listening. Have a great night. Stay great, and we'll talk later.